I'm very quickly starting to realize that I need to record, edit, and upload these videos on the same day just because so much is going on around the NFL and free agency hasn't even started. Three big trades in a row, 3 days in a row. I've recorded this video and had to scrap it because, again, the draft order has drastically changed. We actually talked about this exact scenario last week, but McDuffie to the Rams, no real surprise right there. Interested to see where they play him in the slot or outside. That was for a late round first. The second big trade yesterday was actually a big surprise to me. It was DJ Moore to the Bills for a second round pick in return. If you're a Bears fan, I feel like you got to be ecstatic about that. I'm no GM or trade value expert. I would have guessed a fourth at the absolute earliest, but maybe that's not fair for a guy who has had some really good years, who is still 28, probably still in his prime. And as long as he's able to take that offense to the next level, looking back at it, a late second might not be that big of a deal, but it's really about the production. What can you get out of them? It is kind of results oriented in that sense. And then obviously the big blockbuster trade was Max Crosby to the Ravens. I don't think anybody really saw that one coming. I think the Bears were probably the leading candidate there. A couple different teams, but certainly not the Ravens in my opinion. And I like what they're doing. They're trying to go all in and get Lamar Jackson a Super Bowl. Minter coming over from the Chargers, defensive-minded head coach. I still think they're a little weak in the trenches, interior defensive line. Matt Abike, I'm not entirely sure about his health. I'm not even sure the team is that sure about his health. I've heard some Ravens fans tell me they don't think he's ever going to play again. So maybe I'll have to do some more research on that. We'll see. But he's a great player. They could desperately use him this upcoming season. Interior offensive line, same thing, kind of weak in the trenches. Linderbaum is a pending free agent. We'll see if he goes back to Baltimore. But guards are kind of a concern as well. Pass catchers are a concern. So a lot of spots the Ravens still need to address. And I like it for the Raiders as well. They pick up the 14th overall pick this year. They pick up a 27 first-round pick, which is kind of a big deal. It's hard to imagine they won't have the draft capital. And I don't really see the Raiders being a competitive team this year. We'll see, obviously. But, they can make a move to somebody like Cam Coleman or even Jeremiah Smith, depending on, again, how that draft capital looks next year, how their performance this season shapes up. But I do like what they're doing. I think their defense is just so far away from being even competent that Max Crosby is not going to change that by himself. So I like picking up the draft picks, building around a new head coach, a young quarterback. We'll talk more about what I think they're going to do here in this draft as we move along. But obviously Mendoza at the number 1 overall pick. Pick number 2, we have the Jets in our last mock draft. I actually had them select Caleb Downs here. Now, there's been some rumors coming out of the combine that Caleb Downs has a partially torn muscle in his knee. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Obviously, I'm not privy to all the information that some of these organizations have or that these trainers have or these doctors have, but there's rumors of him potentially having degenerative knees, something that cut Todd Gurley's career short. I don't know if that's entirely true, but it could possibly cause Caleb Downs to slide quite a bit, regardless of how talented he is. I mean, we see it all the time. We saw it last year with Will Johnson, who many consider to be the most talented prospect in the class. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that, but he was a really highly graded cornerback prospect and fell all the way to the second round to the Arizona Cardinals. So hopefully he can stay healthy because, again, a super talented player. Don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I love Caleb Downs. Super high floor, super high ceiling. I see a lot of people say he just has a really high floor and the ceiling isn't that high. I don't really agree with that. I get he's not built like Sonny Styles or maybe like an E-Man Worry, another safety last year that obviously had a ton of success in his rookie season, but he's barely even 21. Just a very cerebral football player, but incredibly physical as well. And this is where my opinions kind of differ from a lot of people's. I don't think a safety at 2 is a reach. I think a safety like Caleb Downs, a Swiss Army knife in your secondary, is becoming one of the most valuable tools for any successful defense in the NFL nowadays. I think people who aren't willing to adapt are just going to fall behind. I mean, again, we saw it with Email Worry this year. We've seen it we just talked about the Ravens. Kyle Hamilton, one of the league's premier defensive players, who kind of fell because of his 40 time. So, despite not running the fastest 40 or being the fastest player in general, he is still one of the best and most effective players on defense in the entire league. That position is so incredibly valuable. Even, some of the best defenses in the league that maybe don't have a safety that can do a little bit of everything, that can play in the box, that can cover in the slot, they still have good slot corners. Like, think about the Patriots defense in the postseason. That's obviously my team. Marcus Jones, terrific cover corner in the slot. And then McDuffie was a huge reason for the Chiefs kind of building their dynasty. Like, their defense definitely carried them, after Tyreek Hill left. And Trent McDuffie in the slot was a huge reason why that defense was as good as it is, doing all different types of things. Came off that slot against Buffalo, I believe in the championship game, right? One of the playoff games, forcing completion. And, essentially won them the game there. But he's done so many different things for that defense. Having a slot corner, again, even if it's a safety, you can do a little bit of everything. That is such a valuable tool. I think interior defensive linemen that can contain the run, but also get after the quarterback. Guys who can play all three downs, allow you to play two high safeties, without having to stack the box to stop the run. I think that's incredibly valuable as well. It's becoming increasingly more valuable. I think linebackers like Jacob Rodriguez, who can cover and play all three downs as well with great hands, great coverage instincts, I think those guys are becoming more valuable as well. I think defenses that are flexible and adaptable, that's just kind of the next generation of defense in this league. I think we're kind of on a cycle where a lot of teams, we're going empty and just airing the ball out, taking advantage of these big linebackers, and then teams started getting light on defense to kind of counter that. Now people are kind of throwing the 6 offensive linemen or the 3 tight ends out there or the fullback running the football. We've seen a lot with the Rams this year. One of the best offenses, 3 tight ends. All right, the Patriots, 6 offensive linemen, a lot, trying to get the run game going. So having defenders, regardless of the position, that can cover, but who can also contribute in the run game, incredibly valuable. I don't think Caleb Downs at 2 is a reach, depending on the health issues. Now, I am going to change this pick up here. I'm going to go David Bailey. Interested to see what the Jets do. A lot of different directions. A little surprised that Aaron Glenn wasn't fired. In my opinion, though, I think he might just be their scapegoat for the upcoming season, bring in a new regime, and then probably end up with a top 3 pick. If not, they have the draft capital. They have 2 first-round picks next year to trade up and go get whatever quarterback they want. And next year's quarterback draft class is absolutely loaded. You got Arch Manning, who I think is going to be the number 1 overall pick, but Dante Moore, Lenora Sellers, Sam Levitt, Mestamaker, Julian Sayin, Mensa, CJ Bailey, Lagway. Like, there are so many good quarterbacks next year. And then there's some amazing skill position players as well. Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, we talked about a little bit. Dylan Stewart, Colin Simmons off the edge. Leonard Moore, maybe the best cornerback prospect ever. So many good players, good offensive linemen on top of it as well. The 27 class is loaded. I think that might be the Jets' plan. Stock up on young defensive players, young defensive talent, kind of not perform very well this year, and then attack the draft next year. But I could be wrong. I could be absolutely wrong. Maybe they bring in a Malik Willis, maybe a Kyler Murray. I think Kyler's probably going to Minnesota, but anything can happen. We saw what just happened with Max to the Ravens. Maybe they could draft a Ty Simpson or a Nussmeier in the 2nd or 3rd round. A lot of different options for this team. Interested to see what they do. At the end of the day, though, they are the Jets, and they will probably find a way to mess it up. And I am a Patriots fan, so I had to throw a little shit talk in there. Sorry, Jets fans. You'd probably agree with me if we're just being blunt. But I do like what they did. I like what they're doing, picking up all this draft capital, right? I feel like they got a steal for Sauce Gardner. Like, their return was fantastic for Sauce Gardner. It was like the same return for a Max Crosby or a Micah Parsons, essentially, right? Absolutely incredible deal there, in my opinion, for a corner that has been a little bit inconsistent lately. Obviously very talented, but for a corner is crazy. I'm not going to lie. I like them picking up Tavondre Sweat. I don't know why the Titans traded away Tavondre. That's a bit of a head scratcher to me. Titans fans, you're going to know your team more than I do. Offer up your opinions on that. I'd love to hear them. I just don't really understand that one. So I think I'm going to go edge here for the Jets. I think they're kind of opening up that spot to draft an elite edge, whether it's Arvell Reese or David Bailey. I see a lot of people mocking Arvell Reese, and they don't even think about it. Just Arvell Reese to the Jets. I don't really see that happening. In my opinion, it's going to be David Bailey or Sonny Styles. Reese, to me, is just going to be an off-ball linebacker. I get the comparison. Well, I don't really get the comparisons, if I'm being honest, to Abdul Carter, Micah Parsons, 2 guys who played a lot of off-ball linebacker in college. He's I mean, he's a great athlete, but he's a little bit more powerful, and he is fast. He just isn't twitchy. He doesn't have the bend that those two other guys have, in my opinion. He doesn't have a very deep pass rush bag. And obviously, if you're drafting this guy, you're drafting him with the intention of him being a developmental project, growing into something terrific just because of his size, because of his measurables, at only 20 and a half, 6'4", 243. But I just don't really see him being a full-time edge rusher. I see him being more of an off-ball linebacker. I think, if anything, he should be a guy who's like an outside linebacker in a 3-4 maybe, blitzes the quarterback, a run disruptor, but can also drop back into coverage. Doing a little bit of everything, I think, is probably what he would be best at. But, obviously every team is going to have different opinions and different visions of things they can do with him. I just think David Bailey is going to be the number 2 overall pick here. Kind of more of a designated pass rusher right now. His run defense grade and run stop rate here is pretty good on PFF. However, I don't really think that's truly indicative of how good he is against the run. I think he's a little bit worse than that, again, would indicate. But he's a terrific athlete, 6'3", 250. He does have that twitch. He does have that bend. I just think he needs a little bit of development to be a 3-down defensive lineman at the next level. I think he needs to develop some more moves, some more counter moves as well. I'm really not terribly high on David Bailey. It just seems like he's going to be a lock for the top 5. This is not necessarily what I would do. It's what I think might happen. I'm going to offer a couple different options for every pick as well. I think there's another player here, I'm going to be honest, that you can get inside the top 50. Probably more likely, early or mid-second round. That is basically just David Bailey, if not even better. They measured very similarly at the combine. They're built almost the same. Lawrence is about an inch taller here, 6'4", 250, maybe a little bit older than Bailey, but I love Malachi Lawrence. I think if you threw Malachi Lawrence and David Bailey's jersey, he'd probably go inside the top 5. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. I just think Bailey here is going to be the selection for the Jets again, or Sonny Styles. At pick number 3, we have the Arizona Cardinals. I'm going Sonny Styles at 3 here. This is a team that could use a linebacker. The only reason I think this team might not go in this direction is getting PTSD from Isaiah Simmons, who was built very similarly to Styles. Freakish athlete, obviously super high ceiling, just was an absolute bust, if we're being completely honest. And I like Styles. I think he has great instincts. He had some great production in college. I just don't think he necessarily has that killer instinct. I saw it a little bit against Miami. Very uncharacteristic broken tackles against him. Kind of got bullied, but most of the team did. I mean, Ohio State just flat out got bullied in that game, if we're being frank. And really that showing kind of put me off on a lot of Ohio State players. I'm not saying they're bad. These guys are not even real humans the way they're built. They had a tremendous season. Maybe one game doesn't define a team or any number of players, but we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to Carnell Tate. Sonny Styles, though, I mean, there's no reason not to love the guy with the way he performed at the combine and, again, the production that he had at the collegiate level. I could also see this being a tackle. I know a lot of people are mocking Francis Maui-Noah at 3 to the Cardinals. I don't particularly see that. I don't love Maui-Noah's ability to deal with speed off the edge. I think he kind of gets caught flat-footed quite a bit. I don't think he has that lateral quickness, and you're going to see a lot of that at the next level. I think, to me, profiles much better as a guard just because he's such a mauler in the run game. And then maybe Jeremiah Love at 3 can make some sense there as well. At number 4, we have the Tennessee Titans. I think they could go Arvell Reese here. I think Jeremiah Love can make sense. Give Cam Ward a big-time weapon in the backfield. Can catch passes out of the backfield. Can obviously run the football pretty damn well. I think that's probably an understatement there. Now, I know they just picked up an edge from the Jets and Jermaine Johnson, I believe. But I would not hate Ruben Bain right here and use him almost like a defensive tackle. I really wouldn't mind that whatsoever. Maybe use him at an outside edge on early downs because he's a terrific run defender, and then kick him inside because of the arm length concerns on obvious passing downs and let him get better matchups against guards and centers. Would love to see that there. Worst case scenario, you get a little bit more depth on the outside. I do love Oladejo as well. I believe they picked him in the 2nd or 3rd round last year out of UCLA. Had some pretty promising flashes before getting injured. So I don't love people mocking David Bailey to the Titans here. I think if anything, Ruben Bain makes a little bit more sense because he offers a little bit more versatility across the line. I think he could be kind of a defensive tackle at the next level of competition, the next level. There we go. Sorry, my brain just stopped working for a second here. Pick number 5, we have the New York Giants. I'm going Jeremiah Love here, and this might be a surprise pick. I might be the only person on earth mocking this, but I have heard rumors of the Giants shopping around for a running back in free agency. If they can't land a Kenneth Walker and ETN, for example, I would not be that shocked to see Jeremiah Love be selected here. Again, with the possible slide of Caleb Downs, and then if Sonny Styles is off the board before he gets to number 5. Now, I think if Sonny gets there to 5, that's an easy selection for me. That's the pick we made in our last mock draft. I think a tackle like Spencer Fano or Maui Noah can make some sense here. Replace Illuminor, who is kind of aging, coming towards the end of his contract as well. But again, for a team that is looking for a running back, I know they got Scadaboo, but he's coming off a pretty serious injury. And even then, why not just solidify this backfield with an explosive runner that can do a little bit of everything? And I think Scadaboo would be at his best when defenses are already worn down from the feature back in the offense. He comes in and he just drops his shoulder, drops his helmet, and just runs through people. And then you got the upside, the passing and the rushing upside. Obviously, the quarterback like Jackson Dart on top of it. That would be like a 3-headed monster in the back. I don't know, bro. It's so late. It's 5:30 in the morning. I don't know what I'm still doing here. Pick number 6, we got the Browns. I'm going Carnell Tate. Keep him in state. A little Dr. Seuss rhyme right there as well. In my mind, Carnell Tate, no question, he has the talent to be a first rounder and probably top 15, top 10 talent. It's just, again, in that game versus Miami, kind of shied away from some contact, kind of got hit a couple times, and really wasn't willing to throw his body around in the middle of the field. And I totally get it. Again, it's just something that kind of put me off from him. Biggest game of the season, and you're shying away from contact over the middle of the field. I get that saying. Maybe he was leading him a little bit too far, throwing some hospital balls like an old school Peyton Manning, but I don't know. For a team like the Browns, they need consistent pass catchers. They really haven't had it. Judy is the definition of inconsistent. Fannin was a solid rookie, but had some drops issues. And Njoku's a free agent now, but he had drops issues as well. The offensive line is putrid at the moment. Shedeur Sanders didn't perform very well in his rookie season, so interested to see what they do at that position. They did obviously get Titus Howard from the Texans. They're paying that man $20 million a year. That's a fat payday, so that's a good start. I think that's a serviceable right tackle, but they need a left tackle. They need probably a center, probably 2 guards. Probably the worst offensive line in the league. I think this is a good start, though. Get a receiver in Carnell Tate, Titus Howard at right tackle, and then obviously you pick again in the first round, courtesy of the Jags. Pick number 24. At pick number 7, we have the Washington Commanders. I'm going to go with Arvell Reese right here. Could be the future long-term replacement for Bobby Wagner. They could use a little pass rush as well. And I think, again, obviously he offers that upside there. So I do like Reese here. The other possible selections, again, Caleb Downs. I think Mansour Delane can make some sense here. At pick number 8, we have the New Orleans Saints, who I've seen a lot of people mocking edges to. And I get it. Cam Jordan is on the move. I just think it would be insane not to take a pass catcher here when Lemon and Tyson are still on the board. This is a team that needs pass catchers, probably more so than any other team. Obviously, Olave is great. He just has the head injuries, misses quite a bit of time. And I get that Jordan Tyson here is somebody that gets knocked for maybe not playing all of the time, but none of his injuries are connected. I think injuries that are not connected ultimately come down to luck. Surely some guys can be a little bit more fragile than others, but I mean, this guy repped 27 times on the bench press at the combine. He's incredibly strong. He can be a run blocker, but he is by far and away the best receiver in this class in my eyes. And I'm going to be a little bit biased here because I am an ASU fan, but I also know more about Tyson than anybody else out there because I have watched every single snap of Jordan Tyson at ASU. I think he's an awesome playmaker, great hands, really smart route runner, electric route runner on top of it, explosive out of his cuts. Very technically gifted, good after the catch. Again, strong so he can contribute in the run game, block a little bit as well. When people compare Mekhi Lemon to JSN, that's a super common comp that I see all the time on social media. I just don't agree with that. Everybody's looking for the next JSN, right? They're looking for the next Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, great body control, elasticity, pliability. They see Mekhi Lemon, they see a guy who's not 6 foot, who isn't that fast, and they think JSN. And I don't see that at all in Mekhi Lemon. I think Lemon is actually, if anything, a little bit stiff for his size. He just plays bigger. He's great at contested catches, but if you're looking for a guy who has that bend, can easily beat man coverage, but who is also nifty enough to find pockets against zone, who's smart enough to be able to do that, I think Jordan Tyson is your guy. I think the only real downside here is, again, the injury concerns, which are not that serious in my opinion. The only real serious injury were the knees at Colorado early in his college career. Then he broke his collarbone in the last regular season of the game last year against Arizona, and then dealt with a pulled hamstring this year. Obviously a nagging issue, but nothing that serious as long as you give it the time to heal. And even then, dude, he literally played Texas Tech, a top 2 defense in the country, on a pulled hamstring. He scored, pulled his hamstring, and then caught the game-winning pass on 4th down and ran like 30-something yards away from one of the best corners in the country, Bryce Pollock. So there's no concern for me there. I think Jordan Tyson is an awesome playmaker for a young quarterback in Tyler Shough, who I absolutely love. Maybe not so young. Maybe not so young. I think that was the big knock on Shough coming out of the draft, his age, but I love the way he plays. I say this every video, buy stock when it's low on Shough. I'm buying stock on the Saints too this year. I think if they nail this draft, I think they could easily win that NFC South because the competition, frankly, isn't that great in that division. At pick number 9, we have the Kansas City Chiefs here. I've heard they're making a strong push for Kenneth Walker, which I would really, really love for this team. Kenyon Sadiq, I think, could be an option here. I think Mekhi Lemon could be an option at 9. I don't really see them taking a receiver. To me, this would be Kenyon Sadiq or Caleb Downs. I think there's some possibility of them selecting a right tackle as well, which Jawan Taylor, not going to be on the roster next year. So maybe Maui Noah or Fano. But I'm going Caleb Downs safety here. I just think for a defensive coordinator, as nifty, as smart as Spagnuolo, I think he can do so much with Caleb Downs. He would be such a fun player to watch on that defense. And obviously, he's a guy who can come in, contribute big time immediately. And this is obviously a team that's looking for a little revenge this season after missing the playoffs. They want to restore their dynasty and get back to winning immediately. I think Caleb Downs is the type of player that can help them do that immediately. At pick number 10, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, who I'm going to look to the inside here. I'm going to go Peter Woods. I've seen some different opinions on Peter Woods. A lot of people saying that he's not even a first-round talent at all. And I think that's absolutely outrageous. I think Peter Woods, maybe his production wasn't that great this year, and he's a little bit lighter than 310. I think he measured in at like 295. So he's kind of playing a different position this year. He had different responsibilities after losing some weight. I think he's like 6'2.5", like 295 or something like that. Dude, this guy is a freakish athlete for his size. They literally play him an offensive fullback. They throw him the ball. They hand him the ball off down near the goal line. He's obviously tremendous as a pass rusher. He can do a little bit of both in terms of getting after the quarterback, but also stopping the run. I think he just kind of lacks a finishing touch. He's always there. He's always making a play. Not always making a play. He's always in position to make a play. He just doesn't always make the play. And I think that comes with development. I think you want a guy who's always in the spots to make plays, and eventually he'll start making them. So even though his 25 season wasn't that great, I love Peter Woods. And this is a defense that is just really depleted at the moment. They need secondary. I think they got some serviceable corners. Safety, I think, a linebacker, and obviously the defensive line needs to be completely retooled. Hendrickson is probably on the move as a free agent as well. At pick number 11, we're going Mansour Delane, corner out of LSU, super technically gifted. The Dolphins, in my opinion, really need a corner, and Delane is a top 10 talent in my eyes. I think he is so technically sound. A really high floor, maybe not the highest ceiling ever, maybe not as high as somebody like McCoy, who's going to be a little bit more of a gamble because of the injury history, but really high floor. Think he can come in instantly and make an impact for a team that is probably going to struggle this year, might be selecting inside the top 3 next year as well. We'll see, though. At pick number 12, we have the Dallas Cowboys, who I'm going to go with Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon here. Actually, 2 mock drafts ago, I mocked Dylan to them at pick number 20. A lot of Cowboys fans got mad at me. There's no way we're taking a safety, let alone a white safety at 20. And now I think it would be a little more outrageous if he actually did make it to 20 in the first place. This combine performance was ridiculous. Ran a 4.3 something, super strong, great instincts, contributes against the run, but a good ball hawk on top of it. Just a guy who can fly around the field and make plays. And for a secondary, as bad as Dallas's was this past season, this is a player that can help you kind of change the picture, right? Change the narrative. So I like the Thieneman here out of Oregon. At pick number 13, we have the LA Rams. I'm going to go Mekhi Lemon here, receiver out of USC. Keep him in the area. And I do like this selection for him just because Devontae Adams, you know, he was kind of more known for being a great route runner early in his career. As he's gotten later in his career, he's been more of their red zone target. They love throwing goal line fades to this guy. Just really consistent hands. And Lemon, I think, fits that mold perfectly. Again, he plays bigger than he is, 5'11", but he plays like a 6'2", 6'3 receiver. Doesn't generate a ton of separation in my eyes. Again, that pliability just isn't there. I don't think he's anything like JSN in my opinion. I could be absolutely wrong, but I just love the way this guy plays. He just plays hard and he's reliable. And I think McVay and the Rams offense would really value that. We have the Raiders up once again at pick number 14. I'm going to go Francis Mauigoa here. I do like Fano a little bit better, but I think Fano offers a little bit more versatility across the line, whereas the Raiders, again, really just need a right tackle. They could use a guard as well, so maybe if Mauigoa doesn't pan out as a tackle a year or two down the line, they can kick him inside. And, you know, that wouldn't hurt as bad as doing that to Will Campbell, who was picked inside the top 5. You know, I think you'd be a little bit more open-minded to that down the line if you selected him, you know, at 14, again, as opposed to 4. So I don't love Mauigoa. I think he's a great player, and I think he would be a fantastic guard, but this is a team that needs a right tackle, and I'm going to have them select Mauigoa at 14. I think they could go a different direction here as well. Maybe if Lemon fell to them, they could go there. Caleb Banks, perhaps. They could literally take any defensive player and then maybe go right tackle early in the second. Max Yanakor out of ASU, maybe a Caleb Lomu if he were to slide, maybe a Blake Miller out of Clemson. He's up here somewhere. There he is, Blake Miller, 25th on PFF's board. Wow, that's pretty high. He is climbing. Pick 15, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Some people might hate me for this one, but I'm going Vega, left guard out of Penn State. I think he is pro-level ready. One of the few players, well, I think there's quite a few players in this class, but I think pro-level as in he can come in and be like an actual good player right off the rip as opposed to just like, kind of just like your average contributor. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm distinguishing enough there, the difference that I'm trying to convey. That was a whole bunch of fucking word soup right there. I just tried to sound smart, and I don't think I was. We got the Jets up again at 16. I wouldn't hate Fano here if Elijah Vera Tucker did hit the road and sign with a different team, because again, I think Fano offers a lot of flexibility across the line. I know they just drafted Membu to play right guard, but I wouldn't hate drafting Fano here, playing him at guard. I don't think that would be an outrageous decision. We've already had them select David Bailey. In terms of maybe a different direction here, I mean, Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon, Lee Hunter, defensive interior out of Texas Tech, although with, you know, them making the trade for Tavondre, I don't really see a defensive interior being picked early on. We already got the edge, like I said. Maybe a CJ Allen out of Georgia, maybe a Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech. What I'm going to do here is I am going to go Spencer Fano with the intention to play him at guard. And again, I think if somebody gets injured across that line, that happens all the time in the NFL, right? He has the versatility to literally play anywhere. So in that sense, I think he's an incredibly valuable player. At pick number 17, we have the Detroit Lions. I'm going Monroe Freeling here, who I think could go as high as number 6 of the Browns. That is the selection we made last video. Super high ceiling here. Hard to imagine he even falls to 17. I think he's been skyrocketing up boards, but again, really high ceiling, super athletic, 6'7", 315. If anything, I think his big drawback is probably his technical ability, blocking upfield, getting to the second level. Looks a little bit lost at times, but there's no doubt about his physicality. I feel like that's something that's easily correctable, easily developmental. At pick number 18, we got the Minnesota Vikings up once again, who again, I think are going to be the favorites to sign Kyler Murray. And if they do that, you have to imagine they're going to try to make a push here and compete in a very tough division. So safety could be in play here. McNeil Warren out of Toledo. I think this is more likely to be a defensive interior. And I'm going to go Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech. I do like Caleb Banks. He just didn't really play a lot last season. A super high ceiling, but super low floor. Whereas Lee Hunter, I just think you know what you're getting here. This guy's built like an absolute alien on top of it. He's 6'4", 330. A little bit up there in age. Will be about 24 by the time the season rolls around. But I love Lee Hunter. Think he had an awesome season at Texas Tech. Super, maybe not agile, but great acceleration for a guy of his size. Doesn't obviously have the straight line speed, but really quick off the block, disruptor in the run game, and again, can offer some pass rush on top of it. This is a 3-down lineman, in my opinion. Love his game, and I think he would fit really well in the Flores scheme. And I think the other selection that would make a lot of sense there is TJ Parker at Clemson, another 3-down lineman who maybe doesn't have as deep of a pass rush bag as some of these guys, but is a really solid contributor against the run as well. And I think this is somebody that could be valued a ton by the Vikings defense also. At pick number 19, we got the Carolina Panthers up. I'm going Kenyon Sadiq here, tight end out of Oregon. A very explosive player, adds an explosive element to that offense, which doesn't really have one. I like McMillan, obviously just won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Can be a deep threat, but I think he's not really a big separator. He's not necessarily a stallion. He's not going to blow by defenses. He's more just a reliable outside target. And I think Sadiq offers explosiveness, and he also can run block really effectively, so he's going to help open up that run game on top of it. I think a lot of teams could really use a guy like Sadiq, and I think the Panthers get a steal here at number 19. At number 20, we got the Dallas Cowboys up once again. We had them select Dylan Dienneman out of Oregon, and then with our second first-round pick, I would not mind C.J. Allen out of Georgia. Again, this is a team that could really use a linebacker. I think they need a linebacker and a safety really bad in this draft. They need to be much better against the run. They need more physicality. And I like the Dienneman and C.J. Allen out of Georgia. Pick number 21, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Ty Simpson absolutely is in play here, but I think they're more likely to go for a guy who can contribute immediately, help Aaron Rodgers a little bit this season. Their pass catchers were so bad this year, man. They were throwing to Valdez-Scantling and Adam Thielen in literally 2026. They need to inject a little bit of youth into this room, and Omar Cooper in the slot can absolutely do that out of Indiana. Great route runner. Again, I think we'll be able to make an impact immediately for this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. At pick number 22, we got the LA Chargers. I would love Spencer Fano here. This is a team that could really use a lot of versatility on their line as well, with question marks surrounding, their two great tackles' health. And obviously, they just signed Biadasz out of, previously of the Washington Commanders. Still have two big question marks at guard. So offers guard flexibility, and again, can fill in for either of those tackles if they were to get injured. But with him off the board here, a couple different directions this team can go in. I'm going to go with Caleb Banks out of Florida. Big defensive tackle. Again, super high ceiling, but super low floor, especially with the injury concerns Didn't really play a lot this season. This is the true definition of a gamble. If you hit, you're going to be feeling great about it. If you don't, you're going to be like, well, maybe we saw some of the signs, but super talented player, no doubt about it. We'll see if he can put it all together at the next level. At number 23, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, who could definitely use some edge depth, but I'm going to go here with Jamad McCoy out of Tennessee. Similar to Caleb Banks, didn't play at all this season, didn't test of the combine, still coming back from injury, but arguably the most talented corner in this class when healthy. Again, I'm not going to be privy to this information. How is he doing after the injury? Is he going to come back 100%? Plenty of guys are able to, some aren't, but there's no doubt the talent is there. And for a team like the Eagles, who obviously build around their defense, and on their offensive line too, I think they could easily address their offensive line depending on who was to fall here. Question marks surrounding that. Lane Johnson probably coming towards the end of his career. Landon Dickerson as well. And we're used to the Eagles having one of the best offensive and defensive lines in the league for the last couple of years. I think they need some more depth on defense. I think they're going to have to retool that offensive line sooner than later as well. But I think another cornerback 2 is maybe the biggest difference maker for them heading into next season. That was really their biggest weakness. I love Quinyon. I think DeJean belongs in the slot. That's where he's most comfortable. That's where he's at his best. So Jamal McCoy here, I think, would be a great pick for them. At number 24, we got the Cleveland Browns up once again. I'm going to go Caleb Lomu out of Utah to play left tackle, But I think this guy can play guard as well. The big downside to Caleb Lomu is I think he's a little bit lighter than 308. I think he needs to be a little bit stronger as well. I don't think he's going to deal that well with bigger athletes at the next level until he's able to put on some weight, gain some muscle on top of it. But I love his technique. I think he's a fantastic athlete, a terrific pass blocker. He's my favorite offensive tackle in this class, probably. I don't think these PFF grades are that indicative of how good he actually is and how high the ceiling is for a player like this. I love Lomu. Played a little bit of right tackle, but obviously mostly left with Fano being there. But I'm really high on Lomu. At 25, we got the Bears. I think if Lomu were to fall to them, they could take Lomu here. I think they could also go Caden Proctor at number 25, a left tackle out of Alabama. A couple of different options here as well, maybe safety. McNeil Warren out of Toledo. They could go edge. TJ Parker out of Clemson. Maybe a Zion Young out of Missouri. A lot of different options for this team. They do have quite a few picks as well. Again, they got that second-round pick from the Buffalo Bills. So I'm going to take a little shot here. I'm going to go Caden Proctor out of Alabama. Dahlman, big surprise retirement for them. They just picked up Bradbury for a 27 fifth round from my Patriots. They need a left tackle. Maybe Taylor Decker's in consideration there in free agency. I know he's being released by the Lions, or at least requested that. But if that doesn't come through, Caden Proctor here can make a ton of sense for a team that really needs a left tackle. At 26, we got the Buffalo Bills here. I'm going to go edge. I'm going to go Keldrick Falk out of Auburn, who I think could operate a little bit similarly to Ruben Bain, at least early on in his career, just for different reasons. Falk is obviously built much different. The arm length is not a concern for a guy like this who's not even 20 and a half. He's 6'6", 285. His pass rushing tape just isn't very impressive. He's great against the run, blows up the run all the time, always involved in every run, whether it's to his side or not to his side. He just has to develop as a pass rusher, and he has the athletic tools, obviously, to do so. I just think he needs a little bit of time, so maybe play him at edge on early downs again, and then kick him inside, give him better matchups and obvious passing downs, and kind of use him like a defensive tackle. I mean, he's literally built in a way where he could be a full-time defensive tackle, but I like Falk for a team that really was terrible against the run last year. At 27, we got the San Francisco 49ers, who could use a left tackle as well. I believe they're in a contract dispute with Trent Williams right now, but with Proctor and Lomu off the board, within the last 3 picks, I'm going to look to receiver here. I'm going to go Denzel Boston. We know this team loves their big body receivers, their rangy receivers with good hands, and Boston is really the embodiment of that. He has a really good grade versus man coverage as well. I don't think he's a fantastic separator. I don't think he's that nimble in the way he moves, especially for a guy, again, who's 6'4". But you don't have to be a great separator to be a great receiver at the next level. I mean, again, we just talked about McMillan for the Panthers, just won Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he's not a very good separator. That was the biggest concern of him, coming out of college. But then there's guys like Keon Coleman for the Bills, terrible separator, really bad, probably way worse than McMillan, and he didn't pan out. So a little bit of risk there, but again, for a team that needs a receiver, that loves their big body receivers, I think Boston makes a lot of sense here. At 28, we got the Houston Texans up. I'm going to go one of two directions. I think Pregnon here or Basantis out of A&M, or maybe a Caden McDonald out of Ohio State. I think if there's any weakness for this defense, it's their interior defensive line, their ability to defend against inside runs. But maybe they could go McDonald when they pick again at 38. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go interior offensive line, Emmanuel Pregnon. They could go right tackle as well. They just re-signed Trent Brown to a one-year deal. Got to imagine he's probably going to retire after that. Again, they moved Titus Howard to the Browns, so right tackle could be in play. Maybe a Blake Miller or a Max Ihanacore. At 29, another team that could use one of those two right tackles potentially. We had them selecting Caleb Downs in the first. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go Akeem Mesidor out of Florida, out of Miami, Florida here. Don't know why I said Florida. Obviously, Miami's in Florida. But this is another guy, we talked about it earlier with Downs, who is pro ready. Just because of the age, he has the experience. He's a smart player because he's gotten so many reps. He's going to be 25 by the time the season rolls around. But again, for a team that is trying to compete now and win a Super Bowl now this year, the age is not that big of a deal for me. I love Mesidor. I think maybe he's the best edge in this class. He just doesn't have that ceiling, again, because of the age. He'll be 30 by the time, his rookie contract comes to an end. But I would love this draft as a Chiefs fan. Mesidor, and then obviously Caleb Downs, and then they pick again here at 40. So a lot of different options for this team. You got to imagine they set themselves up pretty well as long as they're able to hit on some of their draft picks. At 30, we got the Denver Broncos here. I'm going to go linebacker, and I'm going to go Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech, who I really think could go as high as number 15. I don't think there's any reason why he can't. I think there were some question marks around his athleticism as a white linebacker that maybe isn't size similarly to Arvell Reese or like an Anthony Hill, for example, at 6'1", I believe 235. Maybe not super young either, so maybe the ceiling isn't incredibly high just because he doesn't have the athletic traits you would love to see in terms of size, but he tested really well at the combine. He's fast, he's agile, he's smart. He has some of the best hands in this class, not only for linebackers, but for defensive backs and maybe even some receivers. This guy has really solid hands, really good in coverage, and we talked about this earlier. I think linebackers who can play all three downs, who can cover, are super valuable with the way offenses are evolving, trying to beat the current defensive meta. So Jacob Rodriguez, I would love him on the Pats, but in this scenario, the Broncos are going to land him. Now that leaves my Patriots at 31. This one is easy. Well, actually, maybe it's not easy to me. We desperately need a plug-and-play guard. Maybe we go that direction in free agency. A couple different options there, but if we don't, Chase Pizantis out of A&M would be my selection. If not, TJ Parker out of Clemson. I think there's a lot of free agent ends we could pick up as well, like Boy Mafe from Seattle. A couple different ones there. We won't talk too much about my team. I don't want to make this seem like it's a Patriots video, but let's actually go Chase Pizantis here out of A&M. I think this guy does have the quality to be a plug-and-play guard, come in instantly and make an impact. I don't know if I love the idea of it, though. Again, I would probably prefer to get somebody in free agency just because I don't want to put a new rookie next to Will Campbell. I'd rather have a veteran there. I think that would help Will Campbell develop and play a whole lot better this upcoming season. But again, it obviously depends on free agency. If it doesn't shake out, Pizantis would make a lot of sense. If we do pick up somebody in free agency again, TJ Parker out of Clemson, I would love. Although, maybe not. Maybe we're looking for somebody with a little bit more twitch off the edge, a little bit more explosiveness. I know we have a 30 visit lined up with Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma. I just don't really see a guy like this, especially with the size and arm length, being a 3-down defensive lineman. He would be more of a designated pass rusher. But ultimately, we'll see. At pick 32, we got the Seattle Seahawks up here. I'm going Avion Terrell, another super technically gifted corner. Love the way this guy plays, and this would be an absolute steal for the Seahawks at pick number 32, who are probably going to need a corner. I think Joby and Woolen are both free agents. I'm pretty sure Woolen is leaving, so they basically just retool right away in the secondary with Terrell, who again I think is a really smart player, good in zone and in man coverage, offers a lot of flexibility for a defense that likes to do a lot of different things and try to trick people. At 33, we got the Jets up once again. We've had them select David Bailey and Spencer Fano up to this point. I'm going to go cornerback here. Again, we could go Ty Simpson. I'm going to go corner. I'm going to go Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina. Very physical corner, good tackler, really good against the run. Look at this grade against the run. And he is good against the run. He plays almost like a safety in that sense. Has some hit or miss games. I think South Carolina as a whole had a terrible game against A&M here. They were up 24 at halftime and then just completely crumbled. So I wouldn't really attribute that to Cisse. It was more so the entire team just falling apart. But we got the Arizona Cardinals up once again at pick 34. We're going right tackle here. We're keeping him in state. Max Ihanakor out of ASU. Love this guy's game. Played really well against good competition. Bagged up David Bailey when they played Texas Tech. David Bailey could get nothing going. Had some decent production that game, but it all came against Atkins, our left tackle. So Ihanakor, man, sky is the ceiling for a player who really hasn't been playing football for that long. Terrific athlete. I believe he ran like a 5'1". It's 6'6", 330. This is a good football player right here. Any team that needs a right tackle should seriously consider Max, and I think he could go as early as in the 20s to maybe even a team like the Eagles. But he is a stud. He will be a superstar in the league in just a couple of years when he gets some experience under his belt. It might be a little bit rocky at the start, but I have no doubt in my mind he'll be one of the best right tackles in the league in under 5 years. At 35, we got the Tennessee Titans up once again. We had them select Ruben Bain in the first. In the second, we're going Colton Hood, keeping him in state as well. Colton Hood, I don't know what they're feeding those corners over in Tennessee, but they got some players there. I think they got another corner in the 27 class, Boo Carter. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else playing a different position. I don't know, but Jermon McCoy, Colton Hood, and then maybe Boo Carter. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out my ass here. At pick 36, we got the Las Vegas Raiders up once again. Now, if you knew Blake Miller was going to be here, I would maybe take somebody else at 14 and then go Blake Miller here early in the second. Couple different options, but we're going to go TJ Parker, edge out of Clemson, who I think would be really good value, hard to pass up on at 36. Again, a 3-down defensive lineman. Maybe doesn't offer the speed off the edge or the explosiveness that you're looking for, but going to be a solid contributor at the next level. He's just built like an NFL edge at 6'3", 260, not even 21 and a half. At number 37, we got the New York Giants up again here. We had them select Jeremiah Love. Blake Miller here at right tackle would be a pretty decent option in my opinion. But we're actually going to go Josiah Trotter, linebacker out of Missouri. This guy's an absolute thumper. And there's no reason this defense should be as bad as it is with how good their defensive line is. I think they need a little bit more physicality at linebacker. I think they need a little bit more technical ability in the secondary. So Caleb Downs, I would love at 5. Again, if his medicals check out for the Giants, especially if Styles and Love are both off the board at 5, which I think is a realistic possibility. But in this scenario, I love Trotter, early declare, not even 21, out of Missouri. A big-time disruptor in the run game. Really physical player and fun to watch. At 38, we got the Houston Texans. This could be Blake Miller all day as well. A future long-term replacement, once Trent Brown retires. But I'm looking for instant impact starters for this team. Emmanuel Pregnon has the strength to be a plug-and-play guard at the next level. And I'm going to go Caden McDonald here, defensive interior, really round out that defensive line, come in, help against the run, and then allow those two premier edge rushers to just tee off on obvious passing downs. This is a team that I absolutely think can win the Super Bowl this year, and that is going to be my early prediction. Texans win the Super Bowl, so I'm going after players who I know can contribute immediately. At 39, we got the Cleveland Browns up once again. We had them select Carnell Tate and Caleb Lomu up to this point. A couple different options here. I'm going to go Ty Simpson, quarterback out of Alabama. I don't know if there's that much to love with Shedeur Sanders. Again, it's hard to really judge how good he is because of how terrible that offensive line was, how inconsistent the pass catchers were, and generally just how putrid that offensive scheme was in the first place. But, I think it's pretty easy to doubt Sanders despite all that. So we're going to go Ty Simpson here, who I actually think is really, really gifted. I think he could easily be a first-round pick. And if I'm being honest, I think he probably will go in the first. We're not doing trades here, but it would be hard to imagine that a team wouldn't trade up here late into the 20s at the latest and go and get him. I think Alabama had no run game, which is tough for quarterbacks. The blocking was inconsistent. The pass catchers were as inconsistent as any pass catching group could possibly be. Probably more inconsistent than the Browns pass catching unit was. Ryan Williams took a big step back. A lot of guys were dropping passes right in the breadbasket. I think Simpson is a little underrated at this point. I actually really do like his game. Kansas City Chiefs up once again here. I'm going to go with a player who I think offers a bit of an overlap with Caleb Downs, but I'm going to go D'Angelo Pons as the McDuffie replacement. I think them moving on from McDuffie is something that we expected because the Chiefs don't like paying defensive backs, but it's also testament to their belief in Noel Williams, their selection out of Cal last year, a Watson at outside corner as well, and then move Pons to the inside, which I get he doesn't have to be. He played outside corner despite being a little bit undersized at 5'9", 173. He does play up to bigger receivers, and he doesn't shy away from bigger guys. He's actually a terrific run defender as well. You guys can see right here, 86.0 run defense grade. I think he's just going to be a slot corner at the next level, and he's a guy who can do a little bit of everything. And again, that kind of overlaps with Downs, but having two guys who can do a little bit of everything is not a bad thing. I mean, we literally saw it on the Seahawks, Devon Witherspoon, and then Eman Worry. Witherspoon was an absolute menace from the slot against the Patriots, coming on blitzes all the time. So I don't think it's bad to have two guys that can do that, and I love Pons' game. I think this would be a perfect draft for the Chiefs. Chiefs fans might not agree with me. Maybe they want more offensive weapons, maybe a right tackle like Blake Miller again, but I do like Pons a ton. There's a lot to love there. At 41, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going McNeil Warren at safety. A big-time thumper. Loves to come up and lay the wood. Huge hitter. Fun to watch. Very physical. Maybe he doesn't fly around as much as somebody like Dieneman, but I do like his physicality. And again, this Bengals defense needs some physicality. They just get bullied around in literally every game. At 42, we got the Saints up here once again. We went wide receiver in the first. In the second, we're going Zion Young as Cam Jordan's replacement off the edge. Some potential off-the-field issues. Got a DUI last month, I believe, I guess it's already March, so I guess 3 months ago in December. But there is a lot to love here despite the off-the-field issues. 6'5", 262. Kind of similar to Cam Jordan in that regard. Maybe doesn't offer the crazy bend, but really strong. 3-down lineman. Can get after the quarterback, but again, pretty respectable against the run game as well. 43, we got the Miami Dolphins. We had select Mansour Delane in the first. In the second, we're going to go, I like KC out of A&M, but I also love Brazzell here out of Tennessee, and that's the direction we're going to go. Just as a compliment to Jalen Waddle, I think Conception and then Waddle will be a little too much overlap, just two lightning quick guys under 6 foot. Brazzell is a different player. He's 6'5", so he's a big body, but he actually moves really well for his size. I do think he needs to put on a little bit more weight to deal with the press off the line, and then obviously be more of a contribution in the run game, run blocking. He needs to get a little bit stronger, but moves really, really well at 6'5". We've used the word pliability before, elasticity. I think he offers a lot of that for somebody who is, again, 6'5". At 44, we got the New York Jets here, who we had select David Bailey, Spencer Fano, and then Brandon Cisse. And there's still some really good players on this board that could easily be first-round picks. Blake Miller, KC, Christian Miller, Chris Johnson could be a first-round pick. I think Malachi Lawrence could be a first-round pick. That would probably be my list of guys who could easily go in the first who just haven't in this scenario. Let's look at receiver here. We're going to go KC Conception, a team that could certainly use a receiver. Obviously, Garrett Wilson is elite. Mason Taylor had a pretty nice rookie season out of LSU, excuse me. especially for an offense that generally wasn't very good to begin with. And I think Mitchell has a ton of upside. The guy who came over from the Colts, he's just got drops issues, but if he can put it together somehow, that's actually a pretty respectable receiving core right there, especially if they're lining up to take a quarterback in the 27 class. A pretty solid offensive line. Again, even if Elijah Vera Tucker walks, they have Fano to replace a guard. Membu was a home run selection for him last year, so that offensive line would actually be really good. The pass catchers could be really solid as well. And then again, they kind of just put their quarterback of the future, whether it's this year or in the 27 draft, they put him in a pretty good situation, opportune situation. At 45, we've got the Baltimore Ravens making their first selection here. We obviously had them. We didn't have them do anything. They made the trade for Max Crosby. So interested to see what they would do here in the second round. Maybe receiver. I don't love anybody here, though. A couple guys have already flown off the board. Maybe guard, if we take a look at guard. Nothing I necessarily love here either at 45. I'm going to go Christian Miller, defensive interior, and really just try to get after people with that defensive line. Obviously, Minter as a defensive-minded head coach might be open to something like this. Again, question marks surrounding Matabike, but Max Crosby, you had the selection of Mike Green, the early selection last year, hoping for some more development with him, but no reason why you'd shy away from drafting somebody as talented as Christian Miller if he was available here. 6'4", 310, built pretty similarly to Peter Woods. That would be kind of my comp between the two players. I think both of them, again, good against the run, but have the pass rushing upside as well. 11.3% pass rush win rate. So this is a team that really just needs to be stronger in the trenches, and with no obvious guard selection here or receiver selection, I think Christian Miller would just be best player available. At 46, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We went Vega out of Penn State. In the first round, I'm going to look linebacker here, and I'm going to go Anthony Hill out of Texas, who PFF has falling pretty far on their board, but I don't really know why. This guy has tremendous upside at only 21. He's 6'3", 238, maybe has a bit more to love in terms of athleticism compared to somebody like Jacob Rodriguez, who we talked about earlier. Just a bit of a lower floor in my opinion, but probably a higher ceiling. At 47, we got the Indianapolis Colts up again. Well, not again here. This is actually their first selection because they traded away their first round pick for Sauce Gardner. I'm going to go Jake Galladay here out of Cincinnati. Again, another thumper, kind of similar to Josiah Trotter in that sense, just a thumper. Maybe leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of his coverage ability. I think it is better than Trotter's, but really good against the run. And this is a defense that maybe is a little bit soft against the run. I could use somebody like Galladay out of Cincinnati. At 48, we got the Atlanta Falcons here. Receiver, interior defensive line would probably be my selections here. We're going to take a look at interior defensive line. I'm going to go Grayson Holton out of Oklahoma. I think this guy is kind of pushing up people's draft boards right now. 6'2", 292. Really good at getting after the quarterback, but again, can hold his own in the run game as well. Maybe it would be a slight reach here, but there's no receivers I love for this team, and I don't think cornerback is really that much of a need for this team. At 49, we got the Minnesota Vikings up once again. We're going to look to safety here, and we're going to go A.J. Halsey out of LSU. Another big, hard-hitting safety would be the replacement for Harrison Smith. Can play in the box, play up top, offer some versatility there, but super physical safety. Always coming downhill. Always got to pay attention to where this guy's at. Otherwise, you're going to lose your head. At 50, we got the Detroit Lions up once again. We went Monroe Freeling, a left tackle in the first round. In the second, I'm going to go Chris Johnson here, corner out of San Diego State, who a lot of people see as a first-round talent. I just think there's so many interchangeable players here late in the first, early in the second, even late in the second, that could be first-round players. Or guys that did go in the first in the scenario that could be second-round players, like Chase Bezantis or Messidor because of the age, for example, or Denzel Boston because of the lack of agility or pliability. At 51, we have the Carolina Panthers up once again. I'm going to look linebacker here. Don't really love anybody. There is a player not listed on PFF that I do love, who I think could go as high as the second round. Shad Banks Jr. out of UTSA. Go watch his highlights. Really fun player to watch. Speaking of hard hitters, but with no obvious linebacker selection here, I might go Cassius Howell out of A&M. Give them a designated pass rusher, which is something they do need a little bit more pass rush on obvious passing downs. At 52, we got the Green Bay Packers up here. I'm going to go corner. I'm going to go Keith Abney, one of the last good lockdown outside corners left on the board right now. Keontae Scott, Stukes, probably more slot corners / safeties. But I love Abney, obviously, as an ASU fan. Just a very instinctual player. Very sound, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. The athleticism is not going to jump off the page at you, but just a good football player, and I'm a proponent of drafting good football players. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers up here at pick number 53. Hard to imagine Blake Miller would fall this far, but I suppose it is a possibility. I'm going to go Tre'Davious Stukes here, slot corner / safety. Again, we use the word versatility a lot in this video, but can play multiple different positions. Fantastic hands, probably the best hands of any defensive back in this class, maybe of any class over the last couple of years. Really can catch like a receiver. Had an outstanding pick against my Sun Devils in the Territorial Cup, but this is a guy who ran like a 4.3 something at the Combine. I've been on this guy for a while. And that's coming, that means something coming from an ASU fan, and he has definitely risen up a lot of people's draft boards. Just a really good player. Even if he gets beat, he's got the speed to recover, and at 6'2", the range to recover as well. At 54, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, who we had select Jermod McCoy in the first. I'm going to go Blake Miller out of Clemson here as their right tackle for the future. Really strong offensive lineman here that again, I think can make an impact instantly at the next level. I don't think he's going to be asked to for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think he'll probably just take some time to develop here behind Lane Johnson. At 55, we got the Chargers up once again. We went Caleb Banks in the first. We're going to look interior offensive line here, and I'm going to go with Keelan Rutledge out of Georgia Tech. They need some plug-and-play guards, whether it's through free agency, probably through free agency and through the draft. They need to shore up the offensive line. They obviously just signed a center, Biotish, formerly of the Commanders. We mentioned that earlier, but yeah, they got to protect Herbert this year. That guy was fighting for his life last year, and I felt so bad for him. We got the Jacksonville Jaguars up at 56. I'm going Kamari Ramsey out of USC, another hard-hitting safety, flies around the field, fun to watch, and for a team that needs a safety, I think Kamari Ramsey makes a ton of sense. At 57, we got the Chicago Bears. I'm thinking about going safety again here. I wouldn't mind Genesis Smith out of Arizona. A great ball hawk, just really weak against the run, man. Like almost timid in that sense. Needs to become stronger, needs to become more aggressive, but some of the best ball hawking skills of any DB in this class. I'm going to go Malachi Lawrence here, who I think, again, could be a first-round selection. I love Lawrence. I think he's David Bailey, just in a different uniform. He is so damn good, and I think it would be really stupid of some teams not to take him earlier than this. Maybe the Lions at 50, and again, I think he could easily go in the latter half of the first round, maybe to the Chiefs or the Patriots at 31. He's that talented. He's that good. I think he's got more moves, a larger skill set than Bailey does, and his run grades are a lot worse than Bailey's, but I actually think him and Bailey are similar run defenders, and I think that's something he can grow into. He can grow into a role as a 3-down defensive lineman, but so fun to watch, explosive off the line, very twitchy, just hungry for the quarterback, man. Go watch his tape. 58, we got the San Francisco 49ers up once again here. I might consider tight end, maybe like a Max Clare. I think Shanahan is going to value a tight end who can block and who can also receive. Kittle obviously just had a super serious injury. He's towards the end of his career, considering that fact as well. So I'm going to go Max Clare out of Ohio State here. At 59, we got the Houston Texans up once again. This is a team with so many good draft picks, really good draft capital, 2 second-round picks, the first-round pick obviously as well. I'm going to look edge here as a replacement for Danielle Hunter, who just signed a 1-year, $40 million extension. And I actually saw somebody on Twitter making these guys, they dogpiled on a person who did a mock draft and had the Texans select Keldrick Falk in the first round, which is a possibility. He could fall late into the 20s because, again, his tape really isn't that impressive, at least in the pass game. And people were like, this fucking dumbass just selected Keldrick Falk, and they got Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter is not young, man. This guy is an NFL veteran. He just signed a 1-year extension for $40 million. Got to imagine after that, when they pay CJ Stroud, that he won't be on the roster if he doesn't just retire. Guys retire all the time at a lot younger ages than that. We just saw Dahlman, the center for the Bears, retire. So they got to start thinking about a replacement to pair up with Will Anderson for the future. Derek Moore out of Michigan, I think, makes sense. 6'3", 260, and at worst, this guy offers a little rotational edge depth for a team that, again, I think is going to make a run deep into the postseason this upcoming year. At 60, we got the Chicago Bears up once again. We went Caden Proctor in the first, Malachi Lawrence in the second. And late in the second here, we're going Genesis Smith, a ball-hawking safety who I think profiles similarly to Byard in that regard. I don't think Byard was really ever that effective defending against the run. More of a coverage safety. And I think Genesis Smith is exactly that as well. He's just a lot rangier than Byard at 6'2". At 61, we got the Rams up once again here. We went Lemon in the first, and in the second, interested again to see what they do with McDuffie. If they plan to play him on the outside, maybe Keontae Scott could make some sense here as a slot corner. They could go edge. I think their defensive line really underperformed for him this season. And they could do with some more depth as well. Maybe a Garrett Nussmeier here late in the second as a future replacement for Stafford. And I actually think that's the direction I'm going to go here. I could see them taking another guy they think could be a starter this year or contribute as a rotational piece. Again, trying to go all in for the Super Bowl, which is clearly what they're trying to do towards the back end of Stafford's career, making that trade for McDuffie. But I'm going to go with Nussmeier here. Obviously got benched, didn't play very well for LSU, but going into the season, a lot of people had this guy mocked as the number 1 overall pick. Maybe not an athletic freak by any means, doesn't really have the rushing upside, but there's certainly a lot to love for a player like this. Me personally, not so much, but LSU's offense as a whole was terrible. The offensive line wasn't very good. The scheme was trash. The receivers really weren't great. There was no run game. This was one of the worst offenses in the country. So it was really hard to judge if Nussmeier was good or bad, in my opinion. And I think there's a lot to love for scouts. I think he profiles well as a quarterback at the next level. So I'm going to go Nussmeier here at 61 of the Rams. At 62, we got the Denver Broncos. I'm going to go Jadarian Price out of Notre Dame here. Not a lot of tread on his tires, obviously running behind Love, but a really fun back to watch. I think could go as high as in the late 30s. I would say maybe to the Texans, but the Texans just got Montgomery. Maybe the Giants would take a stab at him if they didn't go Love in the first, if they went Styles or Downs. Maybe the Cardinals could take him at 34. I think that would probably be his ceiling, but I love Price. I think he's a smart football player, hits the holes, runs hard. At 63, we got my Patriots up once again. We went Chase Pizantis in the first, and we're going to go Mason Thomas in the second. I think this is more realistic value for Mason Thomas late in the second. Again, as a guy who probably is going to be a designated pass rusher just because, again, of the arm length, because of the size. Probably doesn't have the ceiling to grow into as a 3-down defensive lineman, but I could be wrong. If Mason Thomas didn't go here at 63 to the Pats, would not be surprised to see him go at 64 to the Seattle Seahawks. But I'm going to take a bit of a stab here on a guy who went crazy at the combine, ran a 4.3 something on the 40-yard dash, Mike Washington Jr. out of Arkansas, 6'2", I believe. Again, lightning quick. Great downhill runner, but actually has some pretty decent vision, can hit holes when he needs to, and it seems like Kenneth Walker is on the move, so I like that move. If they don't go with running back there, they could probably go with a little bit of edge depth with Mafe possibly on the move as well, but I do really like the way this turned out. Had some surprise selections. Definitely think we filled a lot of teams' needs. If you don't agree with something, you're probably just going to be like, this is fucking trash. I'm never watching this again. Stop doing this. Find something else to do. That's fine. I would prefer you would offer a counter argument, be like, well, I don't think they're going to do this because, well, they have this young guy that they drafted in the 6th round last year who I think actually shows some promise, or maybe they're going to address this in free agency. Like, give me a reason. Give me a reason why it sucks. It's okay to tell me it sucks, but give me a reason. Appreciate you guys for watching, man. This is obviously going to change. Probably more trades on the way. Probably I'll wake up and see another one and have to redo the whole thing, but maybe not.